Okay, we're recording.
Thank you. Sharon, if you would, I'll call the meeting to order here. It's noon. And if you'd take roll and then note who's in the room there for the benefit of those who of us that are not.
We have Deb Johnson, Ian Warden, Shelley Deering, Joe Wenner, Gail Moorhead, Paul Geiger, and Nate Bunsey.
Great, thank you very much. We've got the approval there. Shelley or Deb, do one of you guys want to approve, or the agenda to approve, please?
I move to approve the agenda. I second it.
Is there anybody that is here for public participation? Seeing or hearing none. Approval of minutes, the 1/19/24 minutes are there. Can I have a motion for that, please?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from January. I'll second that.
Okay. Thank you very much. And we're to the December 23 financial statement review and discussion. Joe?
Okay, the packets were provided on the NASDAQ for you guys to review. So I'm just gonna go over a quick summary of what was in the packet, what happened during the month. So revenues were slightly better in December compared to November. Expenses did jump up quite a bit. We had a lot more contract labor as we wrapped up the crisis program. We also had heavy utilization of contractors in the wildfire court with lots of overtime because none of the contractors wanted to work over the Christmas holiday season. So the ones we had significant amount of overtime. Let's also see during the January financials because some of those invoices came in quite. That debts continue to run high. The AR is still high. What we've done on that side is, working with our tree bench, Dragon Collections up on the self-pay side. We've also reached out and got a contacted Medicare biller to help bring in Medicare billings right now and get that done. We have, the recruited Medicare biller in 5-6 months at this point. And so it's just too much for Tammy and Jay to do in addition to this. And so that's kind of, as that ages out, it makes our contractual increase and our bad debt increase the same. Some of the things we're focusing on from a management side is we're looking at FTEs and contractors. So we're trying to convert people to FTE if they are a contractor. We're looking at every posting, every requisition for contractor and trying to find better ways to do things. So we've actually cut a couple of FTEs out of various spots in the hospital at this point through that process. In addition to that, we've listed out every contract for services that Bartlett has and categorizing those into need, nice, and local and national. So we've actually trimmed 2 contracts down. We've done an amendment to our LinkedIn contract and then starting down that one as well. The rest of the senior leaders are in the process of evaluating that spreadsheet now. The big thing that happened in the month, we were able to book Q2 interest revenue. So that was over $900,000 of interest revenue that hit the financial statement. So that actually made it look halfway decent. It was still bad, but better than it was if we didn't have those numbers. So I've been working with CBJ trying to get a monthly number. At this point, I'm just getting ignored, I believe, because they're not responding to any of my emails. So at this point, we're not going to estimate interest revenue. We're just going to look at when we actually have final numbers from CBJ, unless they send us what actually happened during the month. So with all the little things going on in the month, we have an overall net loss of 6.7%. And so one of the steps we're also taking is we're getting new legal counsel contracted with as we speak, I believe. And so when Ian's out over the next 2 weeks, I'm going to reach out with them, looking at our corporate structure and then other programs that might increase revenue as we go through that. So that's kind of the packet in general. I didn't go super deep. Is that, you guys have any questions?
Are there questions of Joe from the committee first?
The chair, just to confirm that I saw that physician contract labor was
Up quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's due to
Anesthesia.
anesthesia. Okay.
So that was December was the first month we had one.
Okay.
So that was a big deal. We had to estimate revenue for them too, so we estimated low, so there wasn't quite an offset for it, but there's lots of new stuff going on in these books.
Okay.
On the wildflower network side, I do have an update on that. Oh, there's no questions.
No, go ahead.
Actually, I've got some before you move on, Joe.
Okay,
I know we've talked about this before, but on the budget variance, you know, this month we had pretty significant low contractual allowance percentage to gross patient service revenue. And can you just touch on that a little bit? I mean,
are you looking at the overall tab or the hospital tab?
I'm sorry, I'm on page 7 of the packet. I'm looking at the budget variance line for the current month. And you know, we've had these swings in prior months, and it just, you know, I know this has been an ongoing project of yours, and I guess I'm just curious where we stand with, you know, getting our arms around that contractual allowance amount.
So we did actually make some tweaks to the model. We did a 2-year look back and we made some tweaks. So I made it over 2 different months trying to get stuff lined up. Most of that was just how the aging buckets flushed out in the model.
Yeah.
And so as we have this big AR that started coming off the books, and as it transfers between the classes, you know, on our aging, it's until we get it cleaned up, we're gonna have big swings, I think. You know what I'm saying? So you have this aging bucket that gets real old, then we start pulling them back as we build Medicare, and it drops to a secondary, and they're paying different percentages. I think the model is gonna be good. It's just getting it cleaned up to start to get consistency in those numbers.
Okay. I think overall the budget variances on expenses and non-salary expenses is a good thing. That's good to see. I know it's kind of weird, but it's non-cash, but depreciation and amortization being so below budget this month, do you have any sense of that?
I don't have a sense for it. I know we had some stuff that came off that was getting finalized depreciation, so. And I'm not sure if we have everything new on the books at this point either.
Yeah. And then on your interest income comment that you made, that huge adjustment there, that's just mark to market, right? I mean, it says interest income on the page, but really that's investment including.
Investment income, yeah.
Okay.
So CBJ sends us a quarterly spreadsheet that has a percentage based on cash balances for the 3 months, and then we book those.
Okay. And I know we've got this variance to budget schedule on page 6, and maybe to lead into that, the 2 big variances that we've had again this month for both inpatient, outpatient revenue, pretty large misses there. Could you speak to that, and also in the context of what we've got on page 6?
Yeah, and so I mean, most of these are new programs that we knew they just started up, where we booked revenue, or we had budgeted revenue for the first part of the year where we had no revenues to offset with them. So you have home health and hospice there at the top, crisis obviously that started in December. And then MHU was also a big one. That one was budgeted at almost like 9.5 patients per day, and we've ran closer to 4.5 patients per day. And then our revenue per patient day has been significantly less than the budgeted amount as well. So there's 2 different things driving that MHU variance. I can say during the month of January, our census was almost 9.5 patients per day. So it actually came up. You'll see that when I finalize the next sets of financials. Med surge was a mix that's inpatient and outpatient. So it is days, but it's also observation beds and ancillary stuff that go along with that. I did include pharmacy in there because it was one of the bigger ones that was actually exceeded budget. So, I mean, there's lots of departments that swing both ways on this. So just as the FYI, pharmacy, it's all different patient classes too, but the biggest side is infusion therapy, chemo, obviously.
Okay.
Is that page 6? Okay. That answer your questions? So as I go into my budget this year, I'm actually looking back at this, how we budgeted last year, and then I guess how do I more accurately budget for next year? I mean, there's lots of swings in these that we can't anticipate either.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the 1/1/24 implementation of the for the DRG like payment that the state has implemented for Medicaid revenue? I know that that's not baked into these numbers, but it's gonna even increase headwinds starting, or it has already increased it for starting in January.
Yeah, that's my next bullet on mine.
Okay, all right, so let's stay on this then. So help me understand again, how do we have that big of a miss on hospice?
I wasn't there for budget. I mean, I know that it's ramping up the program to get going, so I don't know if it was just more delayed. You wanna comment on that?
When we, through the chair, when we put the projections together for revenue for hospice, we thought we were going to be able to start billing much earlier in the year. I would say that's the biggest component of it, and we had to project out for staffing purposes and for other costs, what our growth was going to project. And we've had to hold that back somewhat artificially because it took so long for us to even get our survey complete. So there are a couple of factors that have both prevented us from being able to bill for those services, but then also prevented us from growing at the rate we anticipated. That's the best I can offer.
Yeah, Nate, I appreciate that. And so are we getting on the horse now? I mean, are we starting to ramp that up now?
Through the chair, yes, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but yes, I don't, do you happen to know,
So
Gail?
through the chair, home health, I believe we've seen 52 patients and I don't have the numbers on hospice in my head right now.
But we have grown beyond what we were doing when we were when we first got our provision.
Yes,
In terms of the number of patients can take on it.
yes. Through the chair, we anticipated starting in April was our anticipated start date and we did not start until almost September.
September, October, yeah.
That sounds right.
Yeah, thank you, Gail. And then if you could speak a little bit to Med Surg, do you have any more information on that one, Joe?
I'd have to pull the details. Maybe I spent most of my time digging into MHU, to be honest. So
Yeah.
That's the biggest variance I saw.
So that really is, that's just a function of the patient load, right? It's just the average daily census, isn't it?
Yeah, average daily census observation. Those are the ones that drive that.
And what are we running now? You mentioned around 4 year to date through December. Has that improved since then?
Yeah, during the month of January, mental health unit had 9.2 patients per day, I think, something like that.
Oh, good.
So it jumped up quite a bit. It's 9 since it was still not last time. So
They will be at 12 on Sunday,
yeah, so good patients.
Oh, really?
completely full on Sunday.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Al?
yeah, can you remind me, where are we on billing with hospice and home care now? Are we fully able to bill or?
Hospice and home care, we only got surveyed on hospice, home care, and having, so we're not even, we're months away from billing for home health. Hospice, it's with NGS, and that was 21 to 45 days before they turned it. And so, based on everything else, it could be another 3-4 months.
We're still months out.
I believe they've notified Kim Stout of when they're planning to do the home health survey. And I just don't have that.
March 8th. Okay.
That sounds right, yeah.
But remind me, when do we expect we'll be billing? They don't want to get those two confused.
Hospice is the one where they're coming to, oh no, home health are coming to survey. They
Yeah.
surveyed hospice in November. And then it was up to 45 days.
That's right.
NGS, which is the Medicare, it's the MAC. So they're on the process.
In that, it should.
Could be.
Yeah, the way this process works, just in general, is that they have to survey before we can bill, but once they survey and we clear any survey issues, they then have to notify the federal government, then issues us a billing number. Both of those can take months in and of itself. So just because you have the survey done, doesn't mean you have your number set up to be able to bill. So I think what Joe is saying, at least hospice, we're still waiting for that number. Home health, we're still waiting for the survey.
Through the chair, they were expecting a big revenue for at least part of that period. That's billed, will all get billed.
Yes, we can go back and bill, especially for Medicare. I'm not sure about.
And they both have to be,
I don't know how much that is or whether or not we know if there, those rules are embedded in our revenue.
that's our year-to-date revenue. through
So that's our year-to-date revenue.
Not big revenue.
So one of the things, Mr. Chairman, is that one of the disciplines that I'd like us to follow is after we have a couple of, let's say, a quarter or two normal operations, we need to go back and look back at these programs to see whether or not there's things we can do to improve the viability, improve the volumes, or whether or not, given the circumstances, they may not be viable. So that's something that I think you could hold us accountable for in the May, June timeframe on some of these programs. But, you know, we're going to be looking at them through the budget process before that. Give you an estimate.
Thank you for that, Ian. I think that's a stellar idea. And just so I can have good focus on the crisis, where are we on crisis now as well? Either Gail or Nate?
Or through the chair, maybe Tim McDowell would be the best to speak on this.
Okay.
I think, oh, Kim, you're on there.
Thank you. What question, through the chair, what questions did you have?
Just where we are in terms of crisis and billing and where that program stands.
So we've been having a census of about, I think we've had a total of 6 through the program so far. We are still waiting. We've just added, we're having some challenges with Meditech, so we just added a module in there for scanning and archiving, which according to medical records or HIM, apologize, thinks that'll help to start looking at the billing process going through that. So currently we still have not been surveyed. We're still on our temporary license over there, so we haven't been surveyed over there as yet. We're still working closely with the state as well to try to ask for some variances that may help affect the bottom line more in a positive way. And so we're waiting to hear back from them, such as, is there a possibility to ask for a variance that if a crisis center is so many feet from a emergency department, do we have to have 24/7 nursing care? So we are in the process of looking at that and working with the state just to have them understand a little bit about the financial challenges surrounding crisis, what the implications are, and seeing if they can partner with us in our requests.
Okay. Deb or Shelley, any questions there?
I think you've covered it all.
It seems to me like, and I guess I'm posing this to Ian, you know, we've had such a delay in getting some of the surveys and being able to kind of move forward with billing and so forth. Have we sufficiently raised this issue, I guess, first with the congressional delegation or the departments themselves? I mean, it's creating some real harm to the hospital, and I just wonder if or I guess I'm curious your thoughts about whether we've been loud enough.
Right, I think, let me speak to 2 things. One specifically about the crisis center. I went back through the original pro forma and compared it to what actually had happened. So there's a real big difference between what was initially planned and what was actually done. And in many respects, what was done was an area that had to be subsidized by the area that wasn't done. So I think that's the first thing, is that for each one of these areas, we have to ask ourselves the question, are they going to be viable? Because without that viability, cash has to be moved from the cash generator of the hospital to these other entities. So that's the first thing that we have to kind of assess. right now, Joe is going through and trying to develop budgets, and again, because we don't have operations that are kind of normal, still waiting for a number of things. We have to make a large number of assumptions. Now, having said that, I think the best time to raise these issues is as we go through the budget process, because we will have a responsibility to disclose this. I feel that we have a responsibility to disclose this to the assembly. And what I think the best way to do that is to show them in a consolidating set of budgeted financial statements, i.e. a budget for the hospital, budget for crisis, a budget for hospice, Wildflower, and so forth and so on, given the best guess, so that they are at least aware of our concerns. And I think that process is going to come up relatively quickly in March, right? So we're just maybe 2 or 3 weeks away from that. Having said that, because we don't have a lot of history in the operations of these, the information, it's still going to be somewhat guessed. But for example, you can say the crisis center, we get $1,000 per night. And we were completely full for every night of 7 beds times 365. That will give you a certain level of revenue. And you can look at the expenses and see whether or not that, as they say in the South, does that dog hunt? And that's what I think we're in the process of trying to do through the budget processes, uncover what are the major areas of cash drains and see whether or not people agree with that, and then ask our owners and others, what would you like to do about that? Now, I don't think we can go into any sort of discussion without an opinion of what we should do or a recommendation of what we should do. But that's something that we're going to be working on the next 3 weeks as we go through the budget process.
Yeah, thank you. And Joe mentioned kind of the hospital structure. We touched on this at the last meeting. And are we, looking at the, critical access designation, some of those things do we have anything further to share, or are you guys still just kind of framing that out?
Well, I think we could share this, is that the legal, there's about 2 or 3 dimensions that we have to really look at carefully. One is the numbers. Does this make sense from a number standpoint? And it does look more positive. Can we get there legally? That's a different question, right? Because when we look at our volumes, we're very close to being above some of their requirements. So what I've asked Joe to do while I'm gone is work with Hall Render, that's coming on as our legal firm, specifically on this issue. And this is an issue that they have a tremendous amount of background and understanding of their reimbursement group, headed by a partner by the name of David Snow. So Rob is on board, as well as Joe, of kind of moving forward on that part as soon as we can, so we can have a better discussion on that. While the numbers look good, if we went in that direction, we're just a little bit too big for that. And right now, I think what we're doing is going through and looking back through the cases to see whether or not those cases be reclassified something else. But it's not a assured deal that we could actually shoehorn ourselves into that designation. That's kind of one. The next item that you asked is, in cost-based reimbursement, it's best to separate out an entity that's cost-based, regardless of its designation, from those entities that act as sinks to the overhead costs. It's a pretty typical thing. When I've talked to Rob, he thinks we could do it without organizational changes. I don't know the answer to that, because that's a Medicare designation, right? Not just a separation by accounting. And so again, that's something that Joe and Paul Render and Rob will be going through here over the next couple of weeks. So I think we'll have a finer point on this issue within the month.
Thank you. Ian. On the critical access piece and the size issue, are there strategies that we could pursue potentially to bring us down? Or is it kind of a, either it's a toggle yes or toggle no?
Well, the bed rule is specific and it's daily, so that's kind of one barrier. When we've looked at our cases where we go over that 25 bed, we do hit that. And the question is, are those cases able to be reclassified in some manner if we were on top of everything into a different classification that does not hurt that 25 bed rule? So we don't know the answer to that because we have to go through all those cases and have some sort of determination.
Sorry. All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
So again, we don't have a definitive answer for the finance committee, the members of the finance committee, but it is something that we'll be looking at very carefully.
Well, I appreciate that, and congratulations and thank you for our new legal firm in place. That's excellent news. I know you put in a lot of work on that. So
yeah, and I have to say, Rob was very, very helpful, as well as the city, in terms of moving that forward. I think he was able to understand the urgency and worked at a very fast pace, at least from the city standpoint.
Yeah.
But he was real helpful. We appreciate it.
Yeah, that's great news. What is the look back period? I'm curious when you look at, this caseload and whether somebody, is part of the 25 or we could exclude that case. Is it a 1 year period? I mean, how do you over what period of time are they evaluating that?
I think they evaluate it year to year. I'm not sure I know the answer to that, but we can't violate it any single day within our fiscal year.
No, we can't violate it. But I think what he's asking is if they look to approve this, how far does Medicare look back? Is it 5 years, 6 years?
Yeah.
I pulled 6 years worth of data and got it all laid out, so I'm ready for the conversation on it, but I don't know the answer to it. That's gonna be information you don't have.
Yeah, great. Okay, well, I'm glad to hear it's moving forward, and I guess we'll just all have to wait and see how that shakes out. Well, thank you for that update, Ian and Joe.
Oh, you're welcome.
Let's see here. Moving on.
I do have a few more bullets. Do you want me to keep talking through my points?
Yeah,
Or-
please. Yeah,
That's-
keep going there.
So you touched base on the APR DRG impact. So we are through our first full month. So we pulled all the claims that were actually discharged in the month and paid during the month. So we started paying on the 17th. So it's kind of a delayed process with Medicaid. We had 18 accounts processed that were inpatient. We compared it to how we were paid per diem prior to that. It resulted in a decrease of $154,000 in compensation. And it's probably really only half months of processing, so this could go up to 300,000 a month. There are some discrepancies in how we code it and how the state coded it that we're working with them on. But even if what we have is accurate, it's still gonna be between $100,000 to $200,000 decrease in reimbursement every month. The biggest piece of that was on the mental health unit where we had some of these, what do you call them? Non-consensual stays. We have people committed for up to 30 days by the state. And so, and then on the DRGs, the average length of stay is like 6. And so they're basically paying us for 6 days of care, and we have to do 39 days, and we had some big losses on those. So we're working with them on seeing if we can use some of our DET funds, which is the funds we use to pay for non-insured people that are committed and on our floor. So the state pays for those. So their initial signal is that they'll allow us to use those funds, so there might be some offset. It's not going to fill the whole hole though. So everyone's on the same page. But this will be something we continue to monitor on a monthly basis as we. Not good news. Did I answer your question on that one?
Yes, thank you.
On the wildfire court side, Tammy got signaled this morning from the processor that CMS actually sent our claim back to the processor. He's in the stages of final So what he told Tammy is we should have it either today or tomorrow, where we get our P10 to start the billing process. So once they give that to us, we can do Medicare, commercials, once we get the number, and then we'll have to work with the state to get Medicaid going, which is 81% of the patient volume over there. But Medicaid is also signaled that they're primed and ready to start processing. So once we get their number, it's somewhere between 12 and 15 days when we start receiving payments from those claims. So they should process pretty quickly. We have our billers primed, all the claims are ready, so it should be out the door pretty quick and back pretty quick, ideally. But we've been promised stuff before and never got numbers too, so I can only tell you what they tell me. And that will be ideal because as we look at the balance sheet, you saw cash decrease over the month. There's roughly $6 million in receivables that were met for Wildflower Court, with the biggest piece of that being Medicaid. So that cash flow will be important as we moved into this billing cycle. We're in the process of working with LG Rayfield and rolling the books over for Wildflower Court into our balance sheet and update right now, and moving the cash into our bank account, which we had engaged CBJ on because of interfund issues. And they actually were sitting on $1.8 million as of Monday. And so they've collected some of those older accounts that are sitting there that were well done. On Wildflower Court.
Okay,
Move on to the last edition, was the budget process and budget calendar. It's kind of a late addition to the packet. We added on a day or two ago, yesterday, I think, and today, so you guys can see that. When I first developed the budget calendar, I did it based on last year's dates, which is my bad. I should have went out and reached out to CBJ and got new calendars, but they moved back the date where they wanted the budget due to them. And so my digital calendar, we actually had time to approve the budget at the March board meeting, but now they want it on 3/15. So I can have the budget ready for CBJ, for Ian to review on 3/1, bring it to the finance committee at our 3/8 meeting, but at some point we'll have to get the full board to approve it before we take it to CBJ. And then
We need some time to give some of the members of the city, like the city manager and some assembly individuals, a heads up on some of the issues. Don't want to surprise them. You know, as they kind of work through their own issues. This will just kind of feel like we're heaping on, but I feel we're obligated to at least make sure that they're aware. And then I have to say that, you know, as an aside, Joe has kind of indicated some of the action items that were taken, but I still owe the board kind of more of a detailed plan, but and I expect to have that done in March for you, but we are marching forward, tightening up expenses, trying to figure out ways to reimburse, looking at contracts, trying to shore up our IT issues. So all of those will be kind of wrapped up in the plan. But we're still not out of the woods yet.
right.
I need about, generally about $1 million to $1.5 million a month. Not just once, but every month. It's about 12 million. Or improvement about 12.
I don't know, we've got Kenny on here, I see still, and specifically on the calendar. It would seem to make the most sense, Ian, Joe, that we push that date for approval by the board to the as close to 3/15 as we could, in order for you to, you know, both give the chance for the city to be familiar with it, and also for our board to you know, review it and ask questions as necessary. Have you guys thought about when you want to do that? I mean, are we talking like the 12th or 13th of March, or what are your thoughts there?
I was thinking 14th or 15th.
What's that?
I was thinking the 14th or 15th. I mean, we were originally scheduled on the 15th for finance, and then we moved it back, trying to be on top of things, so opened up that Friday slot.
Yeah.
Joe, I'm gonna be out of town the 14th and 15th, so
We do the 12th, the budget will can be complete basically on the 1st. just so everyone's on the same page.
So Max, maybe I could talk to you about this offline, but you know, you
Sure.
have your finance meeting on the 8th. You think we could just have a special board meeting after that? On the 8th? Or do you want to have something separate from the finance committee meeting?
I guess I'd look to Ian and Joe on their preference and, you know, this necessary, you know, do they want to what degree do they need to kind of, let CBJ kind of chew on that as well? I mean, should we shoot for, could we do the 8th, Ian, or should we go for the 12th or 13th?
You ready for the 8th?
I think I'll be ready for it.
If we're ready for the 8th, I would just suggest we do it, because you never know if there's going to be things that you would like us to change, alter, or emphasize, or do a little bit more analytics on.
Yeah.
So that gives us a little bit of time to adapt to any things that you feel are important for us to consider, do.
So when could we get that budget a couple of days ahead of time, Joe? Is that possible? Like, let's say,
My goal would be to get it uploaded in the portal on the first when I give CBJ the preliminary. So you guys will have a week to look at it and be ready for questions.
okay, great.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, please.
So would we then have a special board meeting after the 8th, but before the 14th or 15th,
Well, Kenny is
like the 12th?
Kenny's suggesting at the conclusion of the finance committee meeting, I think. Isn't that what I'm hearing, Kenny?
Yeah, that's what I would propose, that we have a finance meeting on the 8th. Right after the finance meeting, we go into a one-item board meeting after the finance committee meeting.
Through the chair, I'm going back to the comment that Ian made, that if there's something that comes out of the finance committee meeting that requires some sort of adjustment, I guess we could do a
Subject to.
a subject to that, but that was the reason I asked for a day or two, or a working day or two later, to give them the opportunity
To approve both our contingencies in case any stuff comes up.
I it wouldn't have to be that way if we're gonna do it on the same day.
Yeah, I think that's wise, Devin.
Okay.
You know, and I think, you know, if we can make it work, Kenny, to do it on the 12th or 13th, just the law of unintended, you know, things that come up, you know, you can just, Murphy will just, you know, something will happen. And so we'll probably want to have that extra space in there. So maybe we shoot for doing a special meeting on the 12th or 13th.
Yeah, I'm fine with that, Max. I just was trying to think if we could do it differently. And we just remember that the committee and the whole board will have from the first of the month, a little over a week to look at the information, be able to ask questions of Joe and you and me, Ian, before we come to the board meeting, or before we come to the finance meeting on the 8th.
Yeah. Okay.
With that being said, Mr. Chair, how about if we talk about this during the calendar portion of our February board meeting and decide whether we set another special board meeting in March or not?
Yeah, I think that sounds good to give you guys a chance to kind of confab about that. Sure. Okay, so let me get back over off my calendar here then. So have we covered everything there, Joe, at this point now on the
I
agenda?
do have one more item I just want to mention, because everyone's aware.
Right.
So we received a letter from the state of Alaska 3 days ago. It's based on the Bradley Gregg case that was just done on Wednesday. And so we had a payable back to the state of roughly $147,000. And so that's in process back to them, so it will hit the February financial statements. There was nothing accrued as payable for that.
Are those the grant costs?
Those are the grant costs, yes.
Okay, since we're gonna have a payable, I appreciate you bringing that up. I'd like the report that created that liability to be part of the packet then for the March board meeting so that people can see that. I think it's important for this board to understand what happened there. I believe Palmer gave approval for that to be made public.
That's what Palmer.
Is that your recollection too, Kenny?
Yes, it is, Max.
Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Joe, I'll loop back with I'll loop back with Palmer on that, make sure he's good with that, but you know, it's a fairly significant amount and I think it's just good for people to understand why we're repaying amounts. So.
And DOH wrote the letter too, Max, so that is pretty public. I mean,
Yeah.
DOH is gonna know about it, everybody's gonna know about it. It's
Yeah, we did, I think, you know, it was a number that was derived by the city though, right? I mean, this isn't, it was a self-report. I just think all the things around that just need to be made clear to the whole board.
And then also with the, in the letter, it references you as our forensic auditor, but at the time before you came on our board too, that you were the one that found the discrepancies and came up with that number.
Yeah. Okay, well, we'll put it on the agenda for next board meeting. We don't need to spend a lot of time on it, but just getting that report out there.
Maybe it would be, and we could talk about this too. Maybe we just put that letter, Ian and Joe, that was addressed to you, Joe, from DOH, in the packet.
So I can do the report and the letter together, just so it all ties together, so you guys can see that.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, that's great. In some respects, it's good to be finally putting this behind us, you know, I think. It's been a little bit of a cloud, so. Okay, anything else? Well, thank you very much, everybody. We're adjourned. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Max. Everybody have a good weekend. Be safe.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Sit and see.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
You go.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, the enduring